Hello, cooking enthusiasts. This week's video is going to be sort of just a quick little recipe I developed. If you have been following me, especially on Instagram, you know I've had a bit of a journey with sourdough. Of course, I love fermentation and I love sourdough bread and other naturally leavened products for their flavor. In the past, I had a lot of trouble with starters going off on me and just not really being able to maintain a starter for how often I baked. So for a while, I just abandoned sourdough and switched to commercial yeast. In the last few months, I've tried to experiment with sort of shortcut sourdough. I have a lot of other fermented projects going, so could I make something that behaved and gave me the flavor of sourdough, but without the upkeep? I had some mixed results with the shortcut idea, so all of this is to say I'm pretty much back at more conventional sourdough. I have a starter that is a few weeks old now, and I did actually start it with kombucha, but I'm sure by now the regular yeast and bacteria from the air have taken over. I know a lot of people keep their starter dormant in the fridge, but in general, I'm trying to avoid that because I think that is a big source of contamination for me. The other issue I'm trying to avoid as much as possible is actually throwing out starter directly. Given that making a proper loaf of bread is a bit of a production, at least the way I like to do it, I've started thinking of simpler recipes that use up starter. Which brings us finally to the actual recipe in this video, sourdough soufflé. All you need is sourdough starter that is 100% hydration, so you're always giving it equal amounts of flour and water by weight. You also need salt, of course, and a little bit of regular sugar or icing sugar. I have developed this recipe to be a very basic ratio in baker's percentages. For every 100 grams of starter, you want 25 to 30 grams of egg whites. Any egg yolks that result from these egg whites are optional because I also like this recipe as a way to use up extra egg whites. 2 to 3% salt based on the starter. Probably start with 2%. And 4 to 8% icing sugar, depending on if you want a more savory or neutral souffle. or something for dessert. It's a very basic recipe. Weigh out however much starter you're going to use into a very large mixing bowl. Separately, you want to whip your egg whites with whatever machine you have. Once the egg whites are opaque, you can slowly sprinkle in your sugar and some of your salt. The goal is medium peaks, so try not to over whip it, which just takes a little bit of experience. Add the optional egg yolks and the remaining salt to the sourdough, and we're going to start incorporating the egg whites in 3 stages. Sometimes, when incorporating egg whites, a recipe recommends being a little bit aggressive for the first stage, but I recommend gentle folding for every addition because sourdough starter does have its own air bubbles. Once everything is folded together, it should be good for souffle for a few hours in the fridge. I recommend individual buttered and floured ramekins. I found that good baking parameters were 350 Fahrenheit for around 20 to 30 minutes. Just sort of keep an eye on it. The resulting souffle is really very delicious, kind of a cross between sourdough bread, white bread, and angel food cake, and you could take it in all sorts of different flavor directions. I also took leftover souffle mixture the next day and made slightly weird but still very delicious waffles. And you could probably even turn the fresh souffle mixture into Japanese style souffle pancakes. So, if you have sourdough starter or want to get into it, I highly recommend giving this recipe a try. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching.